He's doing wonderful. He's all recovered.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Good.
Thanks for all the support.
Oh, no, thank God. Thank you so much. So, as you know, as we roll on the show, let me take some things out of the way first, because the other day I forgot. So, what lipstick are you wearing today?
Revlon.
Revlon?
Yes.
What color?
Oh boy, I forgot to bring it.
Like red, pink?
Bright.
That family?
Purple, pink.
Okay. Nice. It looks nice on you.
Thank you.
You know that I have uniform lipstick.
I know that.
This is my uniform lipstick. I'm wearing Wet and Wild and Maybelline. So one is kind of purple. The outer one is purple, and the inner one is like baby pink. They have a number for it. So
yeah,
baby pink and this purple. So
beautiful.
Purple one is 835, and this one is 53.6. So, you know, so we got that out of the way. And then, you know, as we roll on the show, right? The music. And we have the privilege of playing Seni by Folake Umosen. So thank you so much, my super fabulous aunt in Nigeria, Folake Umosen, for allowing us use your music on the show. So, my sister, are you ready?
I'm ready.
If you can hear it well, just give me a thumbs up.
Okay, I'm ready. I can hear it.
Okay, good.
Oh boy. Wow.
All right. So thank you for coming on the show, and our fabulous audience watching, thank you so much for joining us this morning. So much, Dr. Atika Taina, for joining us. And I would like to give a quick shout out to the tea event. It's called the Win Women. It's about inspiring stories and women. And in fact, we're going there.
Yes,
Anna,
yes, I'm looking forward. I'm excited.
That's why we changed the time of the broadcast today to 8 a.m. So we're going to be heading there and be listening to inspiring stories from women today, among legal practitioners. So it's going to be at downtown St. Paul at the St. Paul Hotel. And thank you so much, Dr. Taina. I'm privileged to be one of the speakers today. So thank you. And also we have an author, Melanie Bragg, all the way from Texas. She's one of the featured authors on Lipstick Lip Balm and Literacy. And I met her for the first time yesterday, face to face.
Oh, nice.
Because she's here in Minneapolis right now. Yes.
Awesome.
Had an event yesterday. Congratulations to Dr. Turner. She won the Difference Maker Award. So I was there at that event. Yes, because Dr. Turner is a lawyer and Melanie is a lawyer too. So I had the privilege of meeting Melanie yesterday, and I can't wait to meet her today. She's one of the speakers also, and afterwards she has a book signing at Barnes & Noble Roseville. So we have Lipstick Lip Balm and Literacy magazine coming up in January. We're going to launch this show we do here. Is going to go in the print form, and it's really exciting. As we go, I'll be giving you more information on that. So once again, thank you so much for coming on the show, Anne.
Thank you.
For those of you who don't know Anne, Anne is an author. She's a motivational speaker, a faith-based church. Church, faith-based person, church, faith-based organization. And she also works with the community and schools. She's a Bible teacher and independent instructor, all focused on faith-based. And she's the founder and executive director of CHCM, Champlain, ordained. So you're an ordained minister. Pastor, please pray for me.
I pray for you, Bukola, whether you know it or not. I already do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's an honor to know you.
Oh, thanks. Me too. And I can't wait to see you again this afternoon.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. So Anne is the author of Knowing and Yielding to the Voice That Counts. First of all, knowing and yielding to the voice that counts. What does that mean?
Well, that book was my first book. It's very dear to my heart because basically this book tells my story in a very difficult time of my life. So struggling, but not allowing the struggle to stop me from living. So basically facing life with courage, because discouragement come, tough times come, and how we handle those times determine whether we move forward or not. So it's a book that basically speaks to prayer and listening to God's guidance. Like you said, I'm a really firm believer in listening to that voice and then following what he is leading me to do. That's how basically I saw him leading me through very difficult circumstances. Just listening and doing what he was saying. I'm fighting for Nate in the medical field and in the hospitals. It's not been easy because there are wonderful doctors, but there are some few doctors that are so full of knowledge and it's all they know, and it's just really hard to work with those few ones. But it's taken the grace of God to pray and to speak to them and to fight for this child and other areas of life. So basically, that's what that book means. Getting to know that voice. It's that small voice that sometimes we ignore, and then later on we say, oh, I knew it. getting to know that voice and then learning to follow it has been my practice. That's what I practice, and never perfect, but the more you practice, the better you get at it. So that's what that book is about.
Oh, thank you so much. You know, I can imagine fighting for a child with health practitioners, especially when it's health practitioners. They are like, oh, this is our field. We know what we are doing. We know best. And what we decide, we believe is the best decision. And fighting through that to be able to guide them.
Exactly.
To do how God wants them to do it. So what would you say we should be doing to help us even understand when that inner voice is talking to us for us to be able to yield?
I would say just prayer. God is real and he's alive. Really, it's as simple as, God, help me learn how to hear you. And if you are saying that with a sincere heart, he is faithful. He's going to show you how. The more you ask him, I want to hear you, God. I want to know when you speak. He starts to reveal those things to you. It's so simple, and I think that's why we miss it, because we have become so complicated as a culture. We want the things that cost a lot of money, and God comes to us free. And I think that's why we miss him, because he comes so freely.
Yeah, you know, that reminds me of something that I think we say knowingly or unknowingly, like, oh, if it's free, it doesn't have value.
Exactly.
But cost you a lot of money, then there is a lot value in it. So, for example, even if it's just like giving a product to somebody or presenting product and pricing, it's like the psychology of the human being tells you, oh, if the price is a lot more, then the value is higher.
Yes.
Excuse me. But now you are saying, you know, God comes to us free and it's so simple. Do you have like some basic things that somebody can even do like every day to
Sure.
work towards you? Because you said that it's something you have to build, it's something that you have to keep practicing and practicing.
Yes.
So what are those, like, what is like one thing I can do every day
Well,
to help
one
me
thing that yeah,
understanding this voice?
yes, what I do, because I'm a believer in the Bible, and the Bible never changes. So it's so simple. One of the things that I practice is reading the Bible, and reading it and taking time to say, what does this scripture mean for me today? How can I apply this to my life today so that it works for me? So I practice reading the Bible so that I can know what is written for me in it. And then when I read it, I also practice prayer. Like, I wake up early in the morning. Um, when I'm on my treadmill, I listen to worship music. When I'm listening, I'm basically meditating on who God is, and asking him to speak to me that early morning, and then reading his word and doing what it says. And the more I continue to do this, the more that voice becomes clearer and clearer. And then you begin to realize that what he speaks when you are running through your day matches what his word says. So then you know that's God speaking to you, because every time he speaks, it matches his word. And it's not always comfortable. So if we are looking for comfort, we miss out. He stretches us. He really does stretch us. And that's where trust comes. Is he says, trust me. As he is leading us, you gotta trust where he's leading you. And when the more you trust, the more you start to realize he really works. Yes.
Wow. Wow. You know, the thing is, it's like a miracle having you here today, because looking at Nate and the fight you fought with, you know, keeping this child alive, because it's really, I don't even know, it touched me in a very special way when you know, we were trying to get Nate on the show, and he came on the show, danced and did all of that. And then the second or the third day, I saw your post at the Mayo Clinic. I was like, what? You know, he was preparing to go for brain surgery when he came on the show. So, indeed, he has a mom who walks by faith. So, kudos to you, kudos to that, kudos to the siblings, and giving all the support. So now let's come to your book, because we want to give tips to people who want to do their books, who don't know how to, or those who are scared of writing their book. So
yes,
how did you do your book? You have more than one book. So how did you do your books?
So basically, when I knew that I wanted to be an author from high school. And so, but there wasn't any way, my circumstances were not right. So basically, again, that practicing of faith, when God made a way for me to come to United States, I started really journaling, and just one of the things I'm a believer in is education. You constantly can educate yourself. If you go online, there is a lot of information online about any subject, really, that you want to study. So self-education. And then the other thing for people that aspire to be authors is don't wait for circumstances to be right. Start making notes. You know, sometimes the idea drops in your mind when you least expect it. So if it's at the middle of the night, I would have a paper and pen before the era of the phone. I would have a paper and pen on my nightstand, because I would wake up at the middle of the night and some things are flowing through my heart, and I would just write them down as they are flowing, not processing, but just getting them on paper. Because what I realized is when you wait to write the next morning, it's gone, and it may never come back.
You are so right. That happened to me with it happened to me with music. I think I was in a fast, was it January? Yes. And I woke up in the middle of I had a dream, and I was asked to sing, and I sang this song. And you know, I woke up, I didn't know what to do. I was like, okay, what I can do is just sing the song and record myself on my phone. Because I was too lazy to write. I just recorded myself. And in the morning when I woke up, I did not remember a thing.
That's true.
I sang a song last night. And guess what? That song, you know, I gave it to our music director at church, and she has written the notes out for me now. So somebody can play it on the instrument. Yeah. So that is a tip.
Yeah, and the good thing is now we have the phone.
Yeah.
So recording, like you said.
Yes, yes. So Dr. Turner said, thank you, Anne, for sharing about the power of prayer and wisdom. She also said, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, the one who seeks finds, and the one who knocks, the door will be opened. Amen. So thank you so much. She said, ask, seek, knock message is clear in Anne's words. Thank you so much, Dr. Tyner. And please, my fabulous people, if you have any question for Anne, please post it in the comments. So now you've given us the tip about putting the words together. You don't have to wait and try to write a whole book in one sitting. It can come to you in nuggets. Yes. So after writing, let's say we have all the manuscript. So how did you publish? How did you go from your manuscript to publishing?
So basically, I was writing over years, right? Because I've published 4 books in 2 years. I didn't write 4 books in 2 years. I just published 4 books in 2 years. But prior to that, I was always writing. And then when the opportunity arrived, I started, first of all, again, praying. I said, God, okay, I have written all these things, tons of manuscripts. I still have plenty that is written, that is not published. I said, where do I start? I don't know any author. I don't know who to speak to. And just praying, God just started directing me, going online, looking up at the publishers. And I was specifically looking for Christian publisher. When I found Westport Press, and I called others, but prayerfully, I felt like Westport Press worked the best for me. So then I called them and started talking with them and asked them, how do I go about publishing? I have a lot of books written, and that's what I said to them. And so they were very gracious. The consultant that I spoke to asked me about my ideas, and I shared with him. And then he directed me actually a lot. I mean, I should have paid for a class, but they just did it for free. And they said what to include in the book. And he said, some of the things you've written are for using when you speak. You only write ABCD. You don't want to write things that would provoke anybody suing you or going after you because you've written this, their name or that. So they were very, very helpful. And they directed me on how to split up the information and share what in what book. I would have written an encyclopedia of a book, huge, but they directed me on how to spread it up into subjects, and that was very helpful. So,
Wow.
yes.
Wow. See, you know what? Aside from the tip of going with a traditional publisher, the tip I got from here now is, libel. When you are doing a book, especially this applies a lot to memoirs, even some fiction books too. You have to be careful that you are not writing something that is about someone, and when they read it,
Yes.
they know it's that person, and you could be sued.
Mm-hmm.
I was told the same thing when I did my first book, because it was a memoir, and I was told, oh, change the names.
Yes.
So majority of the bad people in my book, that wasn't their real names.
Yes, exactly.
It was the pseudo names that I used in the book. So, because you don't want to be sued. Yes,
Yeah,
you don't want to be sued. Oh, that is a great tip. Thanks so much. So, aside from protecting ourselves as authors, how do you market? What are the tips you can give to an author, whether it's a brand new author or a veteran author? Because there are people who have published books and they're still struggling for years to even market their book. So how are you marketing, and what tips do you have on book marketing?
There is through Westport Press, they did the press release for me. And when they do the press release, they send it to very many medias. Then you can follow up and call them. So that's one of the ways. And really, the other ways is trying to get in like interviews with local radios, local newspapers, because many of the calls that I have gotten to go and speak somewhere or preach in a church, they have come from them hearing recorded interviews on the radio station or reading the newspaper articles, and then people get interested. So those are some of the ways, is finding ways with the local papers, start where you are. One of my consultants said to me, you will never be known nationwide until you are first known where you are, in your village. So start from there. Those local channels are very helpful. Start going to them and introducing yourself to them and sharing what you have in your heart. Because when you share with them, chances are they'll listen. And when they start to promote you, that's one step ahead that you just went.
Wow. Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you. This is really great information you are giving us about book publishing and promoting the book. Does anybody have any more questions? because, like I said, today is drive-through, drive-through edition. Both of us have to go to another event. So okay, I don't see any questions here. So Anne, thank you so much again for coming on the show. Oh, I want to say to you, so Anne information is in the description, so please click to go get the book. It's in the description of this video. And for those of you watching on YouTube, it's also in the description. And those of you watching on channel 14 at home, the link is on the screen of the video, so follow that link and go get your book. And I will also have Anne's contact, so you can contact her and connect with her more if you're looking for an inspirational speaker like her, because oh my goodness, this woman, I doff my heart for you. God bless you. I'm learning you.
Bukola, thank you.
Out of the working faith. So, Anne, what is your last word for our audience today?
My last one really is trust your heart. There's that really, it's a very distinct voice that even in screaming loud noises, you can hear that voice, and it's very nudging and it's very peaceful. Learn to trust that voice. That will get you ahead.
Wow. Learn to trust that voice, that still small voice. Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, Modupe Afolabi said, thank you so much for your teaching. God bless you. Oh, thank you so much. Thanks. So, you know, as we roll on the show, right? We're going to the second half of the match.
More dancing? Bye, Bukola. Thank you.
Say something.
Are you in with watercolor? I was thinking that. Cute. Okay, ready? Yes, it is.
Excuse me. Audrey, do you want a picture with marijuana? Oh, you would enjoy, browse through the books, and we also love having events here. And so with that, I'll go ahead. Are we Facebook Living me again?
Yes.
Well, hello. Oh, my name is Sarah. I'm the general manager here, and if you guys need anything throughout the day, then just let me know. Oh, and there are bathrooms all the way in the back and to the right. Yeah, so again, thank you all so much for coming, and thank you especially for coming. We're so happy to have you here. We wanted to have this event around this time because we know that January is Trafficking Awareness Month, and also we have the Super Bowl coming to Minneapolis in just a couple of weeks, which is a huge trafficking event. And so we felt it was really important. At all times it's important to talk about trafficking, of course, but especially now it seemed like a good time to have this conversation. And we're so happy to be connected with our favorite Bukola Oriola here, who is the secretary to the U.S. Advisory Council on Labor Trafficking. Did I get all those, everything right there? On human trafficking. And who wrote this amazing book. And so anyway, we're so thrilled to have you here today. And I believe you are also a journalist, correct? And covering education?
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much for coming. We're so excited to hear more about your book. And I'm going to go ahead and let you take it away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. I really appreciate your presence here. Thanks for coming to learn about me and my book, and most especially survivors' perspective on human trafficking. This book, A Living Label, I did it to bring out the voice of survivors, not just myself as a survivor, but other survivors that are out there, because we have the same kind of challenges when it comes to working as survivors in the movement. The anti-trafficking movement is big because the crime itself is a crime that generates billions of dollars across the world. And there are so many people working on this issue in the United States and in other parts of the world. However, one of the challenges that we have experienced as survivors is the fact that people just want to use us again. And unfortunately, it's another form of re-exploitation. You know, several times I will be sitting at a table and everybody at that table is paid except me. And I will be told, oh, your voice matters, your voice counts, we really need what you have to tell us, you know, picking my brain. And it happens to a lot of survivors. You know, in professionalism, we have name for consultants. We say if we need someone to give us their expertise, we call them consultants, and we pay them as consultants. But when it comes to a survivor, we don't see that. Instead, we just see somebody who has experienced something and come and tell us what we could have done, whether it's to identify another victim to be able to help the victim, or is to improve on the work that is being done. And in that process, survivors get burnt out. It's not easy to work for free. It's not easy to be used over and over and over again. And the sad part is that we see others who are using the survivors getting paid, and the survivors are not getting paid. You know, sometimes there is this, we talk about anti-bullying in schools, in elementary schools, in high schools, in middle schools. But do you know that survivors are being bullied daily? Why? Because sometimes they say no. When you say no, I've had different incidences where I'm at a place speaking and another person is there speaking. Instead of the person to just talk about what she needed to talk about, the person will turn me to the object in that room and keep referring to Bukola and keep saying, I've been in a situation whereby somebody said, oh, and Bukola didn't tell you this about her story. Oh, and Bukola didn't tell you that about her story. Are you there to give, your own expertise or what you know, or you are there to pick on Bukola in that room and beat her down? Like, oh, she's the victim here, I'm the expert. So that happens a lot, and when this happened to me, at some point I couldn't take it anymore. I had to excuse myself from that room. And I've had situations too where people will ask me to come and speak and drive 2 hours one way, and they're not even willing to pay for gas. So it's hard, it's challenging, and I understand that there are so many people who want to help. There are people in this room who are advocates, and I really commend advocate. I don't joke with advocate. That was why when I got help, I start telling people, don't turn to your friend for help, turn to advocates, because they are professionals. They are the ones who are trained to do this work. They are the ones who will be there for you. They are advocating for you. They will not blame you and tell you, oh, how could you be so stupid? Like your friend will say to you, how could you be so stupid to let that happen to you? I've had people say that to me. How could you be so stupid? You gave yourself cheaply. That's why that happened to you. But advocates don't think that way. Instead, advocates think about how to get you help. Advocates think about what is the next thing to do to stop the misery you're going through. So I really, really commend advocates and appreciate their work. But also, we have to be mindful of not re-exploiting survivors. We have to be mindful when we are engaging survivors, even in the language that we are using when engaging survivors to work with us. They bring a lot of value. The value that you cannot find in any textbook. The value that you cannot find in a research is different when we talk about eyewitness accounts versus going into the textbook to think about the thesis somebody wrote and thinking, oh, I think this is, what could have happened or what should happen versus what actually happened. So because survivors bring this value in the movement, it's also important to recognize that fact and pay them. Some survivors have gone back to school. Before I became a victim, I had college education. So a victim is not just someone from a dysfunctional home. Like we think, oh, it's those runaway kids. Yes, some runaway kids become victims, but it's stereotyping when we think victims are only those who are runaway children. There are people who are trafficked as adults, and there are people who are trafficked as children. There are those who are trafficked by a total stranger, and there are people who are trafficked by family members. So it's kind of complicated when we're talking about trafficking. But how do we really help? And when we are helping and engaging survivors, how do we do it in a way that is empowering for the survivor, in a way that is not re-traumatizing the survivor? Because I tell you, I sit here today, but I'm still living with my trauma. And at first, I thought it was something that after going through therapy, I will be fine, and but no. It's something I live with every day, because sometimes something I don't expect will come up and it will trigger my experience for me. And all of a sudden, I just have all this flashback. And trust me, it's not easy to have, you know, flashback that is not so good. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Thank you, thank you. This is It's My Word Bookstore in Minneapolis. So if you haven't visited this bookstore, I welcome you to come here. There are great books in this place, so please come. Thanks. So thank you so much for having me. And you know, human trafficking is such an important subject. And walking into the bookstore and going around, I already found that this bookstore cares about the subject, because I see fair trade products on your shelf. So thank you so much for the good work you are doing. That means a lot to someone like me, because what you are doing is supporting people like me who are still out there that need help. Also, you are, you know, leaving your money on the table to support the cause. Thank you so much. And for those of you who showed up in the cold tonight, thank you so much for coming to this book reading. Well, it could go either way. If you would like me to read from the book, you can ask me to read, and I hope that we can have more of a conversation about the subject, and also how to identify a victim, because sometimes you might be seeing a victim without knowing that that person is a victim and that person needs your help. And I have two books. The first one, Imprisoned, is my story as the victim. So the victim you want to meet is in that book. You will come across a lot of run-on sentences and a lot of Nigerian accents and probably terminologies. You know, that is the way you will find a victim when they are telling their story. So like, it's putting the human being in the story for real, not some fiction or make-believe, but real. Because if we don't make it real, it will be hard to identify, or we'll just be listening to one single type of story and think that is the only way. But human trafficking can happen in different ways, through people we know or people we don't know. So it's really important to be able to understand that. The second one, A Living Label, I call it A Living Label, an inspirational memoir. The living label, the label part of it is the life I live now as a survivor. Most of the time, survivors like me are working like a labeled item at the store, because sometimes we get re-exploited by people knowingly or unknowingly, sometimes even by professionals. And it's very important to understand how to work with survivors. They bring a unique experience to fighting this crime. As a result of that, we need to see them as subject matter experts and as consultants, instead of just a survivor, come and share your story. We just want to hear your story. When you say that to a survivor, it's like putting down that survivor without you knowing you're doing so, because you are helping that survivor to remember some of those things the survivor does not want to remember. And sometimes it puts the survivor at a corner where the survivor's voice or choice is being taken from that survivor without you knowing that that is what you are doing to the survivor. So I use that as a way to help the public, especially service providers and those who are working in the field, to know how to engage survivor in a way that is mutually beneficial to both the survivor and the person engaging the survivor, and also for survivors to learn how to be professional, or what steps they can take to put their life back together, as I have done despite the challenges I've experienced. Obviously, I am not from the United States. I'm from my accent, you can tell that I was not born here. But how have I been able to survive through the challenges? You know, I will still say that I'm still work in progress, I'm still living through my own trauma, and I'm learning coping strategies every day. So it's important for survivors to be able to also know how to cope when they are triggered. How to cope, you know, sometimes it's good to just be quiet. I find myself, I'm the talkative, but I find myself sometimes I don't talk, not because I don't have what to say, but because if I talk at that moment, I will not be understood. And I won't be able to pass my message across in the way that I want to pass it across for the other person to understand. So I withdraw and I keep quiet. And I see, you know, people around me sometimes get frustrated that I'm quiet, I'm not saying anything. It's not that I don't want to say something, but I'm also trying to cope with my own triggers and trying to learn how to pass that message across in a way that the person will understand my point of view. And I kind of share some of that with survivors in the second book. And the second book also is for raising money specifically. That's why the price is high. Raising money specifically for survivors. This is one of the main challenges survivors experience. Survivors, some of them are not able to get a job. Some of them have records, and because of the records, even when they are offered a job, the jobs are taken from them. Because when they do background check and the background check comes back and there is something, then you have to start telling what happened to you, or they say, oh, sorry, you know, here we don't hire somebody with this kind of records. And that just brings the person back to square one, to where they were. And it's like reliving the experience all over again. A crime that was committed against you is now stopping you from even moving forward. So how do we get around that? I decided, okay, one of the ways is to help survivors go back to school, even though going back to school sometimes doesn't mean that you're going to get that job. But you could go back to school and choose to do something that can help you to be self-employed. Or you can start a business. And thank God, when you are starting a business and registering, they don't ask for background check. Because the business is an entity. So that is one way we can help survivors to reintegrate back and also live normal life. You know, I don't want to be seen as this label of trafficking survivor. I just want to be seen as Bukola. And that is something that is hard when I'm relating with people sometimes. And survivors are so good at looking at your actions. You can say anything you like. You can say the sweetest words you would like to say to a survivor. But trust me, the survivor is only hearing this much of what you are saying. The survivor is hearing you from all your facial expression, your actions, and all of that. And even when you are writing an email or you are talking on the phone, the survivor is not only listening to the words coming from that phone call, but also listening for the way you might be sounding on that phone or in the email, for them to know whether they can trust you or they cannot trust you. You know, I have had to say to some people that they've behaved to me, whether by email, that the way they did made me to have triggers, or it made me to doubt their actions, whether, you know, their actions were right or they really mean what they're saying to me. So all of those are really important when working with survivors. So now I'm going to back up a little bit, so we go to human trafficking as a subject.
Yeah.
So in Minnesota, oh, thank you, Jerry. In Minnesota, not only in Minnesota, but let me just narrow down to Minnesota. Most of the time, we hear sex trafficking. I'm sure you've heard sex trafficking, sex trafficking, sex trafficking. And sometimes you will hear sex trafficking and human trafficking. So let me clarify now. That is a language issue when it comes to human trafficking. The crime is called human trafficking. sex trafficking is one form of human trafficking. Excuse me, labor trafficking is another form of human trafficking. And there is even organ trafficking. It's another form of human trafficking. But in the US, they don't really talk about organ trafficking. You know, they attend to just labor and sex trafficking victims and survivors. But it's important to also know that there is organ trafficking as a form of human trafficking. But let's just focus on labor trafficking and sex trafficking. So when talking about human trafficking, the crime is human trafficking, but sex trafficking is just one form of it. And as we talk about sex trafficking, we also need to be talking about labor trafficking, especially when we're providing services or when there are services available for labor trafficking survivors. So in my case, I was a labor trafficking survivor. I've had people ask me, oh, how were you abducted? You know, when were you, how many men did you sleep with? And I said, no, I wasn't sold for sex. It was my labor, not sex. So basically, the meaning of human trafficking, when we broke it down as survivors, so people can understand, because that's this long technical definition. So to break it down for everybody to know is, it is the exploitation of somebody for labor or sex for another person's economic gain.